Okay, welcome to my presentation. My name is Bernard Njiri, Stellenbosch University. I'm a PhD candidate, and I'll be presenting preliminary results. So your suggestions are much welcome. I would really love to improve on my paper. I'm working on financial openness and external adjustment in emerging and frontier economies. And one question that I usually encounter is, what do you mean by emerging or frontier economies, or how do I differentiate this is an emerging economy or this is a frontier economy? For emerging economies, we have different rating agents that categorize what an emerging economy is, but there is no clear definition in the literature as to what is a frontier economy. So I take World Bank categorization by income to take a group that is that I consider as emerging and the one that I consider as frontier economy. Emerging economies have characteristics of advanced economies, and their GNI per capita is above 3,896. That's according to the World Bank classification. And for the frontier economies, the economies that I consider as frontier are those that are middle income countries that have a GNI per capita between 996 USD to 3,895. It's good I make that clarification. And over time, emerging and frontier economies have been experiencing a large inflow of foreign financing, as we can see in graph A. And since 1970, and actually from the year 2000, we can see that even in the frontier economies, foreign flows are rising. And what that means is that exposure to foreign shocks is also rising in these economies. And in my study, I will be concentrating on economies from the Sub-Saharan Africa. And these economies are interesting in that the levels of resource endowment is different. We have those that export minerals, we have those that export oil, and we also have non-resource intensive economies. So it would be good to see how financial openness and the external adjustment process of these economies behave when we consider this heterogeneity in the resource intensity. Now I move to the problem statement. I'm coming from two studies, basically, the one by Gorinchas and Lee, and another one by Clarida. And when I look at Gorinchas and Lee, what they did is deriving a complement for traditional adjustment, where they linearize a net foreign asset accumulation identity. However, this identity has no micro foundation, and this is what Clarida and Magali builds on by specifying a theoretical model that's giving more insight on the interaction of trade and financial channel, and how the external adjustment mechanism. And this external adjustment mechanism operates through two channels. That's the financial channel and the exchange rate, and the trade channel. That's the trade channel through the exchange rate, and then we have the financial channel through the exchange rate and the interest rate. And it's interesting also to see how these two channels of adjustment are likely to offset each other. However, these two studies have not captured how capital controls and real exchange rate adjustment is likely to affect external adjustment. And they also overlook the importance of resource intensity when analyzing the impact of financial openness and external adjustment in emerging and frontier economies. The second point is not captured in the results that I will be presenting. I will further add commodity sector in my model because these are preliminary results. It's a work in progress. And what this study aims to contribute, or before I go to contribution, it's also good I highlight the motivation of this study. According to Edwards, 2004, he argues that there are incidences of reversals and sudden stops, and this is high in Africa, where about 68% of sudden stops and reversals are likely to happen simultaneously. And approximately 30% of sudden stops are likely to coincide with reversals. So it's an interesting phenomena to that motivates why I should concentrate on emerging and frontier economies, especially in Sub-Saharan Africa, because spaces have not been given much attention, especially in the international macroeconomics literature. And this study contributes to the literature by first developing a model with a funding technology that can capture financial openness and sudden stops. And second, analyzing the relative importance of channels of adjustment in economies with different degrees of capital controls and real exchange rate adjustments. I now briefly take you through a summary of my findings. And in my model, I will be discussing two shocks. First is the technology shock, and then I will look at the foreign funding interest rate shock, and I will also do some optimal policy analysis. That's the optimal simple rule. When I look at the results for the technology shock, our results suggest that when capital control is relaxed and we allow real exchange to adjust, the trade channel is amplified. And what that means is that the trade channel, when real exchange appreciates, trade channel, the trade flows deteriorates because the tradable sector become less competitive. We also find that foreign flows rise, and this increases foreign risk premium. Then for the foreign funding interest rate shock, when capital control is relaxed and we allow real exchange to adjust, real exchange depreciates, trade balance improves, we also find that current balance improves and foreign risk premium falls when the foreign flows decrease. And then with a high capital control and adjusting real exchange, we find that real exchange drives the trade balance, current account, and foreign flows are fixed. Then for the welfare analysis, our results suggest that loss is high when real exchange adjusts and capital control is high. I now go through key equations in my model. The first one is the household utility function, where this household decides on the level of consumption, savings, that's through deposits, and the number of labor hours. And this household can also borrow domestically. The household is only borrowing domestically, and the household is only saving through domestic deposits. And this household has income also coming from profits that are accumulated by the banks and also the farms. And then for the domestic production, farms maximize profit subject to a resource constraint, and there is a binding working capital constraint. And with this working capital constraint, farms have to hold a proportion of assets, that is S, and then they have to borrow so as to finance their capital, so they can finance the capital they rent from the capital producers, and also to finance their wages. And it's also good to note that here, J denotes tradable sector and also the non-tradable sector. And I also allow labor to flow freely across sector as well as wages. Then I have my banking sector. First is the deposit branch. The deposit branch is financed by local deposits, DT, and foreign deposits. And the foreign deposits are priced in terms of tradable, the price of tradables. And then this branch maximizes profit subject to our funding technology, LT. And this is a function of local deposits and foreign deposits with a level of elasticity between these two funding inputs as it is captured by CL. Then I have the loan branch, which takes deposits from the deposit branch, and then it now gives out loans to the households, the tradable sector, and also the non-tradable. There is an adjustment cost when the loan branch is giving out these loans, and they do so subject to a binding balance sheet constraint. That's equation number 9. And then, like I pointed out earlier, my model has 2 shocks. That's the foreign funding interest rate shock, equation 11, and also I have productivity shock. That's equation number 12. And I make an assumption that these two shocks are ERA1 processes. Here is a list of my parameters, but I will only talk about two parameters here. Allow me to just use my pointer. I'm referring to these two parameters. The first one is eta. Eta is the exchange adjustment parameter. And when I set eta to 0, it means exchange parameter is not adjusting. And then when I set exchange adjustment parameter to 1, it simply means that exchange is adjusting. And this exchange, it's the relative price of tradables to non-tradables. It's the one I'm treating as a proxy for real exchange rate. And then I also have alpha B. The first one is alpha B. It's the capturing the degree of financial openness for this economy. When I set my alpha B is equal to 1, it means my model has a kind of financial autarky. I'm exercising high capital control. And then when I set alpha B is equal to 0.5, I'm relaxing the level of capital control. So those are the two parameters that I will be adjusting. And then I see how the model behaves when I have productivity shock and also foreign funding interest rate shock. Now I take you through response to technology shock. First, when there is a high capital control, that is when I set alpha beta is equal to 1. And when the exchange, the real exchange is not adjusting. That is, I set eta is equal to 0. I restrict my real exchange rate proxy from adjusting, and we see that external adjustment through the trade balance is almost 0. And also we see that external adjustment through the interest rate shock, and here I mean not through the interest rate shock, sorry, through the interest rate channel. And here interest rate channel is captured through the foreign risk premium. Why? Because the foreign interest rate is a function of foreign debt and also a function of foreign international interest rate. So we see that when we have a fixed exchange, if I may use that word, or when I restrict my real exchange rate, from adjusting, we find that the impact of the response of foreign flows and also the foreign risk premium is 0, and also trade adjustment. I mean, adjustment through the trade channel is also close to 0. But now, when I allow the real exchange to adjust, we find that real exchange rate is driving the trade balance so much. Actually, it's like 1-to-1. It's almost like 1-to-1. How the real exchange is driving the trade balance. And also we we find that foreign flows are likely to rise, and also and this will automatically lead to a rise in foreign risk premium. Then when I relax my capital level of capital control, now this is like I highlighted in my findings. We realize that real exchange rate depreciates. Real exchange rate appreciates so much that it's also driving the trade balance. It makes the trade balance to deteriorate, and this now is leading to the widening of the current account deficit. And again, when we fix or when we restrict the real exchange rate from adjusting, as it is shown by the red dotted line, again, we realize that the impact of real exchange rate on the trade balance is not as high as when we allow the real exchange parameter to adjust, or the real exchange proxy to adjust. Again, if we relax capital control, but we restrict real exchange proxy from adjusting, foreign flows fall so much, and also the foreign risk premium falls. But if we allow the real exchange parameter or real exchange proxy to adjust, it leads to an increase in foreign flows, and this also leads to a foreign risk premium rising. Now I look at the response to foreign funding interest rate shock. When we have a high capital control, that is by setting my capital control parameter, alpha B is equal to 1. Yeah, we see that the two models behave completely different when we restrict the real exchange from adjusting. And when we restrict the real exchange from adjusting, trade balance improves. But for the case of a flexible real exchange parameter, we realize that, again, real exchange is driving the trade balance so much. And the same is observed foreign funding, although in this case, foreign flows are fixed. They are not adjusting, and the current account is not adjusting also. And then when I relax my level of capital control by setting the capital control parameter to 0.5, this again, sorry, yeah, this leads to depreciation of real exchange rate, and trade balance improves, and it also leads to an improvement in the current account. But when we fix, when we restrict the movement of real exchange parameter, balance dies, and we also see foreign flows fall when there is a foreign interest rate shock, and then And when we allow real exchange parameter to fluctuate, foreign flows fall when there is a foreign funding interest rate shock, because a positive foreign funding interest rate shock makes the cost of borrowing to be high, and this discourages banks from borrowing from abroad. And when the level of foreign liabilities fall or foreign deposits decline, it also resorts to foreign risk premium falling. And now I move to my last slide on welfare analysis, and I compare two scenarios. First, when I have full capital control or a high capital control, and then when I relax capital control, and then I come at the first scenario where I have high capital control, I restrict real exchange from adjusting. And remember, my real exchange proxy here is the relative price of tradables to non-tradables. And then I also allow in the second paragraph here, I allow to adjust. And then for the second case, I also allow, in the first case, I restrict the adjustment of real exchange. And in the second case, I allow real exchange to adjust. And then my loss is the summation of the variances of my variables. And from what I can deduce from my table or my results, we can see that welfare loss is high when a country exercises high capital control but allow real exchange to fluctuate. And yeah, that's all I have for today's presentation. I welcome your comments and your suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Wow, that is a lot of great research. Thank you. I'm going to open up. Are there any questions from the panel? Yes, Nicola.
Maybe I can start again. Thank you very much, Ben. Very nice. Can I ask you two things? One is to be a bit clear what is the transmission channel of the shock in this model, especially what is the role of the banking of your financial constraint. What is that role and how it plays? Because I was one of your supply shock, one of your productivity shock. When you have a productivity shock, you have an increase in output, and you have both an increase in foreign inflows and an increase in risk premium, isn't it? If you go back to the technological shock, you have an increase in foreign flows and an increase of risk premium. How does that play? What is the mechanism? Because essentially, when we think about a positive productivity shock, we think about an increased return, and therefore, yes, there is more capital coming in because it's more. There is a higher return investing in the country. But then there should be also why there is also an increase in risk. Therefore, if this one is due to the bank or to obviously some detail of the model that I missed. Therefore, if you could just be clear what the transmission is. And the other thing that I want to ask is, this is a real model. It's a real business cycle model. It's not a nominal one, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, therefore, the meaning of the fixed real exchange rate. How do you fix the real exchange rate in this model? What is that you block? You block prices. How does the fixing of the real exchange rate work? Because fixing nominal, yes, is easy. You do it monetary. Fixing real, it means that you are fixing the relative prices. That's why you don't have any effect on trade, because a sort of, and I want just to explore a bit how that works in the model and what it means. That's my two questions.
Okay, thank you. So in this case, I'm restricting the movement of relative prices, not the nominal exchange rate, like the way we would have a fixed exchange regime or a flexible or floating exchange regime. In this case, what I'm referring to as a real exchange rate is simply the relative price of tradables to non-tradables. So I'm trying to restrict the movement of relative prices. And then for the banking sector and how this transmission mechanism is working, from what I see, when real exchange appreciates, what it means is that the value of foreign liabilities, will fall. But these banks have have domestic deposits also. So when the value of foreign liabilities is falling, the value of domestic liabilities are rising. So if the rise in the value of domestic liability is larger than the fall in the value of foreign liability, I think that's why we see the banks are tightening domestic financial conditions that leads to a fall in real credit. That's how I see this transmission mechanism working through the bank. When there is a change in the relative prices, that is I'm treating as a proxy for real exchange.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Hilton, would you like to?
Margot, maybe I can just also kind of expand a bit on what Bernard just responded to, and
Sure.
I think what we were struggling when Bernard has been working on this model, that like you see here, the real exchange rate adjustment mechanism, it is flexible, right? So the relative price adjustment is extremely flexible, and this tends to be driving a lot of the results. And we've been working on trying to have a more realistic setup that might, dampen this. The obvious extension would be nominal rigidities, but we don't want to go there because we want to use, a simplified model that it's something that Schmidt Grow, Riebe Woodford show, that you can actually capture sudden stop dynamics with a very simple model that looks like this. And so actually this is a bit of a modeling issue, that we don't know how to necessarily approach the adjustment process of the relative prices. And also what we're thinking is, we're thinking ahead about when we do introduce commodity prices, which I think, Nicola, you have done, Kevin and Rutira have also done, that that the terms of trade shock are going to be really important for some of these frontier economies. So we didn't, obviously, the idea is that we're going to want to calibrate these models or estimate them to these types of economies. And for now, it was, well, let's just have this parameter that's almost like a stickiness parameter or something like that, which limits the flexibility of the adjustment of the relative prices. And almost like those terms of trade, the pass through from, let's say, an oil price shock to terms of trade is not going to be one for one. And I think that's one way we're thinking about it, but it's still very, very early days. But you're absolutely right. Just before the presentation, I said the two issues I had, Nicola, you were the two questions you asked. So you nailed it. Unfortunately for
Still
Bernard.
awake. I'm still awake. I'm still awake.
You're still awake, which is incredible.
My mind.
Okay, but
No,
thanks
but
very
good.
much.
It's good, but it's a
Yeah,
nice.
it's a good observation.
This channel through the bank is quite interesting. Actually, it will be even more interesting when you have the commodity, because the commodity will be priced in dollars. Therefore, when you have an evaluation of the exchange rate, actually will reduce also your asset side of the economy. Therefore, it might actually increase the risk on that side.
Exactly.
As well.
Yeah.
Nice. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Some great questions. And yeah, still going strong in the afternoon. So are there any more questions from any attendees or anyone else in the panel? Or it looks like we're good to go. Thank you so much, Bernard. That was really, really great. And yeah, keep it up. I think it's really got some valuable insights. Okay, so next up.
I appreciate your input.
Thank you. Yeah, and if there are any more questions, we'll definitely send them through to you.